Hello, I'm Mitra Sorrells in the PhocusWire studio, and I am joined by Jeff Berk. He is co-founder and CEO of Tripkicks, and Jeff Klee, co-founder and CEO of Amtrav. I said it's like the Jeff and Jeff show here, you know? Take it away. So let's jump into this. First of all, I think this is an interesting dynamic to have both of you with us. First of all, you're both in the business travel space, of course, but going along with our conference theme, it's a bit of a Titan and a trailblazer dynamic.
I don't know. I'd like to think of ourselves more of a trailblazer than a Titan, but I'm flattered with the Titan label.
So we have discussed with others as well that they're not mutually exclusive, right? But certainly, long history. I think it was 2005 for Amtrav.
2011 is when we got into corporate travel, but
okay.
we had a consumer business before that.
Okay, all right. So, I'm wondering, maybe we can just start by both of you sharing a little bit about what you have seen as founders and maybe the evolution of your businesses, just briefly. I'm curious to know what you've learned along the way, or maybe what you know now that you didn't know when you started.
Yeah, I can kick off. So we actually started up right before the pandemic.
Yes.
So we're obviously, we usually go by Titan, but I'll take Trailblazer. But we started up before the pandemic. So I mean, what a crazy couple of years, right?
Yeah.
And I think obviously a lot of huge setbacks in the industry, but at the same time, there were so many new things that were evolving. And as a startup, it really gave you an opportunity to, a lot of people said it kind of leveled the playing field a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So you got to see what are some of the new emerging trends and concepts and make sure that you were incorporating them. So that, when travel did come back, you were kind of ready. So I think for us, that was a big part of our evolution was thinking through what's travel going to be like when it does restart, and how can we make sure that we're well aligned with the needs of, corporations and business travelers as part of that.
And the great thing is, here you are still today, even though you started right before the pandemic, you made it through the storm, right? So. And Jeff, how about you? What comes to mind as you think about your journey?
My story's different. I started this company when I was in college, and it was selling spring break trips, and I was definitely not supposed to still be doing it 30 years later. But I guess if there's anything I've learned, it's that almost everything everything we've done has always been initially wrong, and it's been about pivoting and adjusting and finding nothing ever works exactly how you expect it to work, but if you're nimble enough and open-minded enough, you can correct from anything.
Yeah, that's probably a good, just general life philosophy, I think, isn't it?
I think that's true.
So Titan, but still very much an agile mindset.
Yeah,
yes.
we think of ourselves as trailblazers.
Okay, fair enough. So let's talk a bit about what you're both seeing then related to business travel. It's certainly been a difficult few years. There's a sense that things are really back, but business travel looks a little different maybe for a lot of companies. I'm curious for both of you, what would you say you're seeing or hearing out there?
I think in general there's more so than I've ever seen before in the industry, there's a desire to do things differently from a company perspective, and I think they're reacting to the changes in the world, but they're also reacting to the changes that are happening within their travelers, right? People, right? The changes that we're all kind of seeing about travel. So I think generally speaking, there's a desire more so than there's been before to do some things differently and to really think about, how do we improve our programs? How do we empower our travelers? How do we give them the information that they need in order to be successful versus just the status quo? And I feel like a lot of the past, 10 years has been, okay, well, we got to get the basics in place, right?
Yeah.
We have to get the basics in place for our corporate travel program. And now it's all about how do we take that to the next level, because that's what travelers, that's what people expect. The world has been evolving so quickly, and companies now that they've been paused for 2 years have to kind of catch up.
Yeah, I'm curious if you're seeing something similar, and also, are you sensing a willingness to innovate and to have a more open mindset?
I think there's a thirst for innovation that we haven't seen, and finally, it took till 2022 just for companies to say, it's not okay that my booking tool doesn't let me book an extra legroom seat. Things that people have just kind of accepted that this is the way it is. I got to book it here and then go to the airline. I can't change my ticket online. People have been conditioned to think, they have to call in when they need to make a change.
Yeah.
But now we're hearing, and let's face it, it's been a rough year for business travelers. I mean, everyone was dying to get back on the road, but when they got back on the road, because of all the labor problems and everything else, flights have been a mess. It's been awful, frankly. Yeah. But the good news is, I think a lot of good is going to come out of it, and I think a lot of having reached a boiling point. Things are going to be a lot better in 2023, and I think we've gotten a lot better. I think the industry's gotten a lot better, and a lot of lessons have been learned.
Would you both agree? I have heard, and I have a sense that those kind of one-day business trips that used to be fairly common, particularly for some of the big companies and things, are kind of gone for good potentially, and there's a lot more thoughtfulness about when to travel, when it makes sense, how to travel. Just wondering if that's something that you're seeing.
Absolutely. I think that's very true. And I think it's driven by, the pressure from companies to say, we want to reduce our carbon footprint. We want to be mindful of our costs, right? Let's be very thoughtful about when we travel. And also from the employees themselves, right? For some of those same reasons. But I think we're also feeling the aftermath of the pandemic. I mean, I know for me personally, I was a road warrior for a long time, and then I was home for 2 years, and I got used to putting my kids to bed. And it's like, well, that's important. Like, that's now a thing that I do, right? Yeah. So if I don't have to be on the road doing these one-day trips, if I can make the most out of my trips, and the trip stacking, I'm a big fan of it. I think a lot of people are, but I think it's from the employee perspective, but also from the corporate perspective, those two things are kind of driving a lot of the elimination of those one-day trips.
Yeah.
I kind of think the jury's still out on this. I'm not convinced. I mean, while I agree that is the trend, I think, let's not rush to judgment on what the long-term impacts of COVID will be. And I think that when things, it's easy to say when a big event happens that it's changing people's behavior forever. But what tends to happen is people go back to what they've always done. Yeah. And everything you said right now seems to be true, but I don't know that will, 3 years from now.
We're out of the recession and things look different.
Yeah. Right. So let's talk about technology and innovation in the space. I'd love to hear from both of you, what kind of excites you right now? What do you see as the most potential?
I mean, I think for me on the corporate side, and I think the appetite that companies have towards innovation, right? Like Jeff was kind of saying earlier, that there's just, there's so much of that happening now. And I think there's the general acceptance for companies to want to innovate. And that sounds small, but it's huge, because that wasn't really the case, several years ago. I mean, we deal mostly with larger organizations, and they're very much a closed door. And now they're very open to exploring new solutions. They know they have some new problems that require new solutions. So for us, that's been the biggest game changer and really accelerator, and why we're still here, right? A couple of years after the pandemic. So.
And also, any specific technologies that kind of interest you and that you see as having potential to change things going forward?
I mean, for us, our big focus, and a lot of we're hearing about at the conference, right? And we've been talking about it for a couple of years, but personalization and the integration of technology that kind of allows for that to happen, and data from one provider being easily ported to another, and kind of the power of that. So I think, in the business travel industry, we always see like it lags leisure, right, by a few years. So that's part of the reason I love Phocuswright, is you get to see what the trends are, and we're like, all right, those will start to appear in business travel in a few years, and maybe we could start to bring them a little bit earlier. But I think there's so much room left for that in business travel in particular, that I mean, me personally, and from a business perspective and a traveler perspective, I think that's still really exciting, because there's so much opportunity.
Okay. And Jeff, what about you?
I think, there's a lot I could say, but I think the probably foremost for us, and it's a little boring sounding, but it's around servicing and being able to change your trip in a really easy way. And it's amazing how we as an industry have lived with. There are so many times when a traveler wants to self-serve, they want to do it themselves. The agent, like on our end, the customer service advisor, would rather they do it themselves, because there's better use of the time. But because of technology, and even when you're booking directly with the airlines, airline bookings often you needed a person involved. And I think so. Our number one focus for 2022 has been to automate everything that we possibly can, and we want our advisors to be there when someone wants to speak to an advisor or chat with an advisor, not because they have to, because there's no way to do something in an automated way. So that's
Are you getting there?
We're getting there. We have. And then the problem in the TMC world is, we and every other booking tool have said forever, yes, we support online changes. But if you start going through all the exceptions, to be perfectly frank, we didn't really support online changes. We supported ones that were like perfectly aligned to what we could do with the technology right at the time. But by the end of this year, we're really close. We're weeks away from releasing something we've been working on for a very long time. That's going to dramatically increase the number of situations where you'll be able to change things online, including like all the trip components, not just flights, and you can change them all together. It's going to be really cool. We're excited about it.
Interesting. Okay, and before we wrap up, thinking about 2023, I'm just wondering maybe one or two things kind of at the top of your to-do list for both of you. What would you say is
top of our to-do list? I mean, we're working on some major kind of expansions that are going beyond the point of sale. So for us, it's really about working with our customers right now and figuring out kind of those key those early use cases, those initial opportunities. And with what we do and the industry getting back to traveling, we've been so focused on kind of the booking path and how do we make sure travelers have the information they need to feel comfortable getting back on the road. And now it's about how do we help empower them to make the most out of their trips, right? Because they're back on the road. So how do we make sure that they're having a successful journey and they're accomplishing what they need to do from a work objective, but also from a personal objective, right? Because travel is very personal.
And it's all blended together now.
So it's a lot of work with our customers to kind of uncover some of those areas.
Okay, and how about you? One or two things on your list?
I mean, I think one of the big changes that will be enduring coming out of COVID is with the remote work, and everyone's finally coming to the realization that, hey, culturally, we've got a problem here. We have all these people that don't know each other, that are working in all different corners of the country. We got to bring them together regularly in order to promote culture. So we launched a product early this year called Gather to make it really easy to plan meetings and arrange the payments and the policy and have all the invitees book their travel really quickly. But we think we've only scratched the surface there. It's an exciting product for us. It's getting a lot of traction, but we'll continue to make it better and better.
Yeah, it strikes me that's probably one of those things that has really only become really apparent this year. Now, as everybody dispersed around, but yet you can get together. But how do you do that and all of that? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Very interesting. All right, well, Jeff Berk and Jeff Klee, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Thanks, Mitra.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.